So when last we left our example website, we had some kind of 3-column setup here. So we're going to get rid of this and start building our site according to this example site that I built here in Tilda. So if you want to look at the site as we go along, it's at meteorite.tilda.ws. So here is a big picture with big text here, little text here, and this text will be in the background. If you scroll down, we'll get a bit of text here, and then we'll have some images here and some text. A couple more images, and then an about section, and then call to action with some social media things here. So it's not going to be exactly like this, but it's going to be a reproduction that's close to this using Bootstrap, just to get you an idea of how it works. So we go to our code. First of all, we're going to get rid of these rows. We don't need this stuff anymore. We're going to replace it with other stuff that looks like the example website. So I'm just going to delete these. Whoops. Actually, want to delete just the columns. So I'm going to keep the row there. This container can stay like this. Actually, I'm going to switch it to container fluid, so it'll span the entire width of the viewport. And then we're going to add some stuff to this row. So just before we go on, I'll go back to the browser and show you that I got rid of the columns here. 3, 2, 1, refresh, and now they're gone. And now we have a clean slate. Let's go back to our code here. And now we can start adding stuff to this. Now our first piece of stuff is this here, which takes up the whole viewport. So that's important to know. There's some text here and then a big piece of text here. So we're going to add those next. So I'm going to have an H1 for the main big title of the site here. So we have an H1 with a class. We'll add class stuff to this in a second. The actual text is here, and then the closing tag is here. One thing I know I want to do is center this text. So text center right off the bat. And then save this, go back to our browser. Let's check it out. 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now we have text. Okay, so this was supposed to be centered. We'll take care of this coming up, doing some more stuff. Let's add the other piece of text above it. Let's call that an H5. It's really small. Hello, whoops, and welcome. With text center this also. Save this. 3, 2, 1, refresh. And now we've got these here. We'll have to get them to stack up vertically and then move them to the center. This one, this piece of text here needs to be a little bit bigger. So we're going to add display to that, display heading. And then we'll change the background color and then change the color of this text. So we can make this text even bigger by doing display 1. Save this, back to our code, 3, 2, 1, refresh. And now it's really big. That's what we want. I'm not going to worry about actual fonts now. We'll just get the pieces in place. Now I need to get this moved to the center, and the most expedient way to do it is to put them in a div of their own. So I can move that div around. Now we have to make sure we do our closing tag. I'll just indent these so I can keep track of them. And then we want to move this div around. So the way to do that is to use an alignment. So let's save this. Let's go to the Bootstrap site. Go to our utilities. In Bootstrap, we can go to Flex and then scroll down to, you can do justify content or align items. So we're going to use align self actually, so that we can get align self center. So we'll add align self center. Now by itself, it's not going to do anything yet, except for center it here. Now it needs to go down here. Problem is it only thinks that the div is this tall. So we need to make it think that it's this tall because it's supposed to take up the full viewport. So we need to go back to our code, add VH100 for viewport height 100. So once we do that, 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now it's in the center. It's then moved over some still, but it's in at least vertically in the right spot. Now, in order to get it into the center here, we need to add margin to it. So margin, now it needs to be margin on the both sides, left and right. So left and right is X, and then we'll have it do the math for us. So we'll do MX auto. So save that, 3, 2, 1, refresh. Oh, it didn't go enough. What happened here? Actually added MX auto to the wrong spot. This row is fine as it is. This is what needs to be centered horizontally. So MX auto goes here. Now let's sum up. We've got a row. The row is viewport 100. So it takes up the whole height of the viewport. And then inside that is a div here, this div here, which is aligned self-center, and then that's vertically centered, and then MX auto will horizontally center them. And inside that, we've got an H5 and then an H1. So these two pieces of text are headings. They're centered. This one has a display 1 to make it really big. And then if we go back to our browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh, now it's set in the center properly. So that's how we built this first row. It's got a viewport height of 100. It's got a vertically aligned div, which is also horizontally centered to the center. One thing that we haven't done yet compared to this is change the color of the text and change the background color and add this picture here. So what we'll need to do to make ours look like that is to add a class to it of our own. So here we're going to make a class called BKGN or BKGD. And then we'll add some CSS to this so that we can get our background, our image there, and our text to be the proper color. Don't need this to do the proper color text. We can actually do it here using Bootstrap's colors. So we can do that right now. This is, we do text light for light colored text. You can do it here as well, text light. 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now it's light, you can barely see it. It's still here. It's not totally white. It's a little bit of gray in it, so you can actually see it on white very faintly. And then we're going to change the background of this so that you can see it. One thing you can do right off the bat is use their background color BG for background dark, just to show you what that looks like. 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now we got a dark background. It's not black, it's a little dark gray kind of here. So I'm going to take this off, and then we're going to concentrate on this BKGD that I created. So in order to use that, I'm going to create a new link, same style sheet. I want href. I'm going to make a CSS folder for my style CSS file, and then don't forget type, text CSS, and then now we've written this link, we need to actually create a CSS folder and a file inside it. So we can go to Atom here on the left, new folder. This folder is called CSS. So now it's still CSS here. New file, if you right click or command click or however you do it. In this folder, new file. This one's called style.css. And then I'm not going to start to add style here. So mine was called BKGD. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the background color. Call it black. So save this. 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now my background is black the way I wanted it. So that's good. If we go back to our code, now I already included some image files here. This is the one I want to use as my background image. So back to our style folder, style file here, background image, URL, and inside URL, double quotes, // because we have to go up a level, and then down into the IMG folder. And then the one I want is logo.png, logo.png, whoops. Save this. Just go back to our browser, take a look, 3, 2, 1, refresh. So this is what happens when you don't set any repeats or sizing. So back to our code here. Next, background repeat. We want to no repeat it. And then background position, actually background size. You can either do contain or cover. So let's try cover. Save this, back to the browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh. This is actually too big. I want to do contain instead. So let's go back to here. Contain, so it's completely contained within the viewport. Save this. 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now it's the right size. It just needs to be centered. So let's do background position, center. I want to do center both horizontally and vertically. So center, center, save this, 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now it's in the center, and now it looks close to my original. It's actually a little bigger, kind of like it bigger there. Looks good there. So we can move on now. So this is done. And to sum up, we had to create this extra CSS file, and then I added an extra class here for the background to be black and for the image to be my logo, and then repeat size and position just so I had one instance of it. It was sized to fit the container and then positioned in the center. And then in my HTML, I created a div that was a row with a viewport height of 100, and then my special background class that's not part of the Bootstrap classes. Inside that div, that row, I had another div that I had vertically centered and horizontally centered, and then had text in H5 small, and then H1 big, and then even bigger using display 1 to get this result. Now, the next section of my example website is another piece of text with a lot of space above and below it. So in our code here, I'm going to do a new row. Good idea to give myself a note so I know which is the end of this row div. Give myself a little room. And then I'm basically going to do the same thing as I did for the text here. So I'm just going to copy this and do it all over again. Now, I want my text to be a little different here, but the structure is the same. I want my text in the middle of a section here of space above and below it. So this can stay. I think I'll change this to paragraph. So this has to be paragraph here. Oops, here, paragraph here. My example, it says multimedia design and digital content production by me. Whoops. So let's change that here. So where are we at? So made 2 paragraphs. Actually want to make this display 1 go away. Back to my example. So my example, the backgrounds are different here. So this one's black. This one's close to the BG dark that Bootstrap provides. So I'm going to add that to the mix here. Up here, I want this whole thing to be BG dark. So I save this. Let's go back to our browser and check out what we got so far. So 3, 2, 1, refresh. Scroll down and you can see it here. Not so big. This div here is not so big. So what we need to do is add some margin or padding to this on the top and bottom. So let's do that over here. Now we want this entire row to have some space to it. So let's try first margin, Y direction, the max is 5, remember. So let's do margin on both sides, Y top and bottom. 5 is the max for the pre-written Bootstrap stuff. Save this, back to my browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh. And it did add margin, but it didn't bring the background color with it. So that's a clue. What I really want instead is padding. So I changed that M to P, save this index. So now I have padding on the top and the bottom. I maxed it out at 5. So 3, 2, 1, refresh. And now I got a better background here. It vaguely resembles my original site here. I'm going to try to add more space to this. So let's add some more space. We can do that by instead of adding padding here, maybe we'll add margin to the next one. So instead of having margin here, we added padding here. Maybe this one we'll put some margin on. So margin Y5. See if we can max it out that way. Save that, 3, 2, 1, refresh. And we got a little extra room again. So that's good. That improved things. I think my original, the text was slightly bigger. So we can add display to this, display 4. I had taken out display 1. Maybe I should have kept it in. We'll add display 4 to both of these. Let's see if that makes a better sizing for this section of text here. 3, 2, 1, whoops, wrong browser window. 3, 2, 1, refresh. And actually, it's bigger than this, but I kind of like it the way it is. So I'll just keep it that way. So again, made another row. We gave it a back BG dark. This is the Bootstrap dark background version. Added max padding to this in the top and bottom directions. And then added extra margin to our div that had just the text in it right here. And then I added display 4 to give it more size, bigger than my original, but that's actually worked out kind of nicely. So I'll keep it that way. And this is our end result. So again, your page will open up like this, and you scroll down, you get this little section here of stuff. And now the next thing we want to build is this whole section here with some projects in it. And then let's do that. So I'm going to show you in Bootstrap. Back to components. There's a component called a card. And so that sort of resembles what I was doing in this page. So here's an image, here's some text. Over on Bootstrap, here's an image and some text. This one has a button, but we can do it without a button, like so. Image cap here with a little text down here. That's kind of nice. So I'm going to copy this. And then we're going to wind up pasting this in a few times because I have 4 projects here. So we're going to paste this 4 times in our code. So I've copied this. I'm going to paste it a few times in my code. Oops. So before we do that, let's start a new row. Make myself a note and row div. Give myself a lot of space because I'm going to paste a few things here. if it pastes in funky for you, you can always select and tab it so that it's a little less messy. So I need 4 of these, so I'm going to do this 4 times. I'm just going to copy this and paste that 4 times. Now I have 4 of these cards. I'll save this. Let's go back to my browser and see what this looks like. I haven't done anything to them. I just pasted them in raw. Let's 3, 2, 1 refresh. And now they lined up in a stack here. So we need to do a little extra Bootstrap styling to get them to be 2 and 2. So if you remember, Bootstrap works on the column method, and then we can use factors of 12 to set them up nicely 2 by 2. So let's do that. I'm back in my code now. I just realized I pasted it outside of my row. So I'm going to move this opening row tag, paste it in over here where it belongs, which means I have to tab these in so that they're indented nicely. Okay, now in order to get the nice lineup using their grids, I need to add another div and do a column thing. So remember, Bootstrap works on factors of 12. And so if I want to do 2 side by side, then I want to do 6 plus 6. So we'll do column 6 here. And don't forget to close this div here, like so. And these need to be tabbed in a little more. Make myself a note here and call 6. All right. I'm going to do this again for this div here. So underneath that first one, I'm going to do div again, class equals column 6. It's going to tab these in so they're indented properly. Make myself a note so I know what I'm doing. Okay, so the first thing, so just to sum up what I just did, I took the first 2 cards and put them inside a call 6 div, each of them. So that gets wrapped around the first card. This gets wrapped around the first card. So if I save this, go back to my browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now at least they're 2 side by side. So that's good. That's better. The next 2 are side by side. So we'll have to fix that. But right now, this is better. So let's go keep fixing this. Go to our code. Keep doing the call 6 thing. So new div class call, oops, can't type, call 6. Tab them in. Whoops, didn't want to do that. Closing div tag. Note to myself. And one more. Tab these in. Closing div tag. Okay. Save this. Back to my browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now they're at least lined up 2 by 2, spaced out a little bit. Now we can do a little more spacing out. Let's go back to our code. First thing, let's space them out vertically, because in our example, there's some space in between. We'll get to this text in a second, but let's get some space in between these images and the section above it first. Let's get some space in between here. So in our code, we want to add some margin to this. So my5, and then my5 also for the next one. Save this, 3, 2, 1, refresh. And now we got a little more space. That's not a whole lot of space, but it's a start. Back to our code. Let's continue that with these, my5 and my5 here. Added my5 to the column class. So if I refresh this, this has some extra space in between.